the 2024 NBA champion, Boston Celtics. And I had said that, I thought, and this was no fault of their own, because champions do get a little bit of luck. You have to have a little bit of luck to win a championship. But obviously the first round they didn't play Jimmy Butler at all. Round two, Jared Allen did not play at all. Donovan Mitchell misses the last two games. Round three, Halliburton gets hurt. And I had said that, it did kind of feel like, even though they had the best regular season record, it was Boston's championship that it was meant to be. But I'm not going to take away anything of them from the finals, because there was a lot of people that thought Luka was the best player in the series. Kyrie could be the second best player in the series. Some people even picked Dallas to beat Boston. And I had said, I thought it could have been a close series, but I looked at it after the first two games and I said this is going to be a 4 or 5 game series. Boston is just the better team.
Agreed. They the one thing about Boston is that they have five guys that they play that can all not only, give you offense, but they give you defense.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, yeah, granted, Dallas did have Luka and Kyrie, two of the best offensive players in the NBA, but they were going up against actual defenders, guys trying to shut them down, and guys that could score. You got two-way players there. That was pretty much the end of it. It wasn't for me. I didn't think there was any way that they were going to win more than one game, maybe two max. Because it's Boston. We know that Boston's going to give up at least one game every series. They're going to have some kind of lapse, and it's just if you can take advantage when they have those lapses. So, yeah, I don't. Like you said, it was their championship to win. They did, kind of get a. I wouldn't say a cakewalk to the finals, but they did play. Everybody was injured on every team that they played, or the stars at least. But even if these guys had played, I don't see any team that was going to beat them unless Boston got in their own heads.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I said, Clarence, I know a lot of Cleveland fans, and obviously for good reasons, we don't love Boston sports. But for some reason, and maybe it was just because I was so sick and tired of hearing about Tatum and Brown, and are they going to break through? And we've seen this deal all like I found myself towards the end kind of rooting for Boston just to get it over with, because you knew it was coming. And it was like, okay, now we see that, okay, the thing about Boston is, like you said, they have five guys that can shoot and can play defense, but they can go 8, 9 deep. And I do think the one negative about them winning the title is from an analytical standpoint. I mean, they won game three shooting more threes than twos, which has never happened before in the NBA. And we know, all like the NFL and baseball and some of these other sports leagues, it's a copycat league. And I do wonder if more teams are going to try to go to this analytical, shoot more threes than they already do, and try to find, the formula that Boston used. And there's not enough players to do that.
Agreed. I'm torn on this whole analytical thing. Like, I'm from the old school where if you're on a fast break and you got a guy handling the ball in the middle, you got two guys on the wings, everybody is running towards the basket. Everybody is running. You're trying to get the layup. Now it's these dudes sprint to the 3-point line. It's weird to me. Granted, I understand, the change in the NBA where the 3-point shot is considered, the wide open 3-point shot is considered better than a mid-range 2-point shot. I understand it, but I don't know. I feel like, I think we saw it a few times, they just keep shooting threes, keep missing. And that's when they lose. So I don't know. I'm a little torn. I think more than anything, their championship comes down to just the players. I mean, they just had better players than everybody else.
For the record, I do think Dallas was a good matchup for them. I had said that, if Denver would have got by game seven against Minnesota, I think that Denver would have beat Dallas, and I think Denver would have probably beat Boston. So I think Minnesota was built to beat Denver. Obviously, their GM coming from Denver. And Denver was up in that game seven by 20 points. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and I have said this too. Clarence, when you look at the NBA now, we look at teams like Denver, they have Jokic, they have Jamal Murray, Boston, they have Tatum, they have Brown. A lot of these guys, they have your superstar, or they have your stars. But you look, most of them are canceling each other out, and it comes down to these role players. And this year, more than ever, the role players played better on the road. I can never recall that in my, I know you've been watching the NBA more than me, but in my 15 years of watching, I can never recall so many role players having big games on the road.
It's crazy. And I think the advent and the change of the role player is something that has kind of come in. You turn guys like a Derek White, who was a main player in San Antonio. He's become a role player for Boston, but he's a role player that can get you 30. Like
Yeah.
it's not it's not like when we were maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where the role players, they played their specific role, which was maybe it was defense, maybe it was rebounding. Now the role player is all right, is like a max. I i would call Max Strus like a role player. His role
Yes,
is to
I
shoot the
would too.
three. Shoot the three. That is his role. Not to do anything. He's not a great defender. He can pass a little, but his role is to shoot the three. So I think the change in what a role player is in the NBA has led to, what we're seeing with Boston.
So you talked about Strus. I want to dive into the Cavs a little bit with you, because I think that the fans and everybody, obviously, there's this whole overreaction and what the Cavs need to do, and they still need to find a coach at the time of this recording. You know how I have felt about Bickerstaff during the past 2 years. I really felt like he was a good coach for the developmental part of the team. But when you watch these Cavs play, I have said for multiple times, I've never seen a team that could not inbound the ball in late game situations like the Cavaliers over the last 2 years. I couldn't get it. They couldn't get the ball in. The spacing was off. They went too much isolation down the stretch with Mitchell. So, listen, I'm not saying that Bickerstaff obviously, should be fired or shouldn't be fired, but I'm also saying that whoever this new coach is, I don't know what they're going to solve the Cavs issues either. Like, how do you feel?
Similar. I feel like the Cavs issues were partly coaching, but partly team construction. And I feel like that might have been just the biggest thing itself. Um, Bickerstaff did the best he could with what he could. I do agree that, he was the coach for them during that time period, where they're getting back on their feet from 2018 without after losing LeBron. Um, but they need to make some kind of trade. I've seen enough of Darius Garland to know that I don't believe that if anyone's going to go, I feel like he's the one to go.
Yes. You
Um,
you cannot have your two top scorers be 6'1" guards. It can't work. You're not a championship team.
yeah,
Now the one
agreed.
pushback, a lot of people obviously, Clarence, want to trade Jared Allen as well. And the one pushback I have said is I don't care, about Evan Mobley's potential at the five. To me, unless he gains 15 pounds, he's a four. He looks like a four. He has that Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett body. I don't think if you're going up against, a Joel Embiid just in the East, or even a Mitchell Robinson or a Miles Turner, just some of those lower level Eastern teams. I don't know if Mobley's body can handle an 82 game pounding at the five, which is why I have said there are situations last year where I took a look at Mobley and Allen, and I think it still could work. But my thing is, and it goes back to being a stretch four. I'm not saying Mobley needs to be, a permanent just outside shooter, but he does need to develop the ability to knock down the three and stretch the floor.
Agreed. Agreed. I tend to agree with you that I think that the Jared Allen Mobley could still work. Um, you've watched the Cavs over the last 2 3 years. Let's just be honest; they're a better team when Jared Allen plays. It's just they seem like they are a better team on the court when he plays. So it's hard for me to say, all right, yeah, we should axe him, but at the same time, the only way that this team is going to be able to get better is through trades. We get, they did what they had to do. They got the star with Donovan Mitchell. They gave up a lot to get him. So that kind of put them in a position where they don't have a whole bunch of assets to deal out to people. So the only thing they can do is they got to make trades. And Mobley's not going anywhere as long as obviously they want Mitchell to resign. So of the guys that are left, that leaves DG, Allen, and do you think that they would offer up Max Strus? Because I mean, some team could want his shooting, but
So the way I view Struz on a real championship team, I think he's your best six man. I don't think he's a starting small forward on a championship team. I would think, with a Coro being a restricted free agent, maybe, you take him or a Levert who drives me nuts because he's either scoring 25 or he's dribbling the ball off his foot. I can't stand watching it. I mean, I've been telling people this for 2 years. I don't want you can have one clown on your championship basketball team. You got two or three, you got problems. And Okoro, I know he got better shooting the three, but it's still not consistent. As great of a defender as you can be, you can't be on a championship team. And are you going to give me 5 points? In every 10 games or whatever, you're going to put in 15, and people think you're developing. Like, I'm sorry, I'm done. I know these guys are kids, but the East, let's be honest, Boston ruled for the East, and Boston's not an all-time team. And the East is not that
yeah,
great. There's
it would.
not a lot of superstars.
No, not at all. I mean, and you bring up Okoro, and that's another guy. It's like, okay, he hasn't developed the way that we thought he would. He's a great defender, but my concern when we drafted him is like, did we draft Andre Roberson remember the guy from Oklahoma
Yes.
City? Great defender, but could not shoot a damn bucket
Yeah.
at all. At
Side
all.
of a barn. He couldn't hit the side of a barn.
Yeah, I mean it was rough. So that was my concern with him. But then you look at it and it's like, okay, well, if we have him and we deal him, depending on what we get back, that's our best defender. And like you said, the East, we're playing Boston. You got to have wing defenders. You have to have wing defenders.
Yes.
So if we trade him and we don't get a wing defender back, or any of the deals that we make, then we don't bring a wing defender back. Are we just making lateral moves?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I've been also, obviously the huge talk around here has been, could they make a deal with the Pelicans to bring in Brandon Ingram? And, I know you and Joey Snyder, my former co-host on the All Things Cavs podcast, believe what I know you guys were going back and forth a little bit last week on Ingram. And I tend to agree with you. Like, I think he's a nice player. Again, I am thinking everything I think is from a championship team perspective. And I think if you're going to make that big of a deal, if you center around Garland for Ingram, yes, again, you're trading that point guard for a bigger wing. But Brandon Ingram is not this player that's going to get you over the hump. And that's the problem is even a guy like Paul George, who I like, is a little bit older, who I do feel like is better than Ingram, but he's also
Mm-hmm.
had injury history. And can he be a go-to number two reliable on championship nights? Because even the last couple years in the postseason, I know Mitchell obviously willed the Cavs in that series against Orlando, but he did not play well in some of those games down the stretch. So if you're gonna have somewhat stars and not superstars, you got to get reliable points every night. And I'm just not sure there's a move that they can make right now that's going to give you that.
Exactly. That is the whole thing. Like, there's not. You said it. What is the move that the Cavs can realistically, not in any fantasy BS trades? What's a move that they could realistically make that would get them over the hump and put them in that Boston stratosphere? And I'm not sure that it's there. It's Ingram, like you said, he's a nice player, but is he just a bigger version of DG? Maybe he finishes at the basket a little bit better. Maybe he's not a volume great 3-point shooter, but
No,
I just don't know.
And some nights when you watch the Pelicans, he wasn't the best player on the floor, and he
Hmm.
was supposedly their best player. And, who knows what goes on there with Zion and things like that over there in New Orleans. But I'm just wondering, and I've said this, and again, it goes back to the Boston thing. When you watch the Celtics and then when you watch the Cavs, which we could all legitimately make the argument, the Cavs might have played Boston the closest out of all four series Boston played. Can the
Yep.
Cavs find, two Derek Whites? Can they find a Peyton Pritchard? That's what they need to find.
Yeah, that's the most interesting thing about all these Brandon Ingram rumors, the trade rumors I've heard, is not really Brandon Ingram. He would be nice to get back, but what about Herb Jones?
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather get if we're going to get Brandon Ingram, I'd like to get some kind of deal where we're bringing back Herb Jones so we get that defender. If that takes IO and DG and something else, okay, I would be okay with that.
Basically, you need Levert, you need a Coro, you need these type players that are better scorers, that are the same
Hmm.
defenders, but are better scorers. And George Niang, you can send him anywhere. I don't care. Don't bring him back. Um, I think the other glaring hole is, as good as Tristan Thompson did last year coming off the bench, which I don't think he was talked to. I think he played really well in his backup center role. But they need
Hmm.
to find backup bigs, backup for Mobley, backup for Allen. They didn't have that. You're going to Dean Wade, who again, who's a nice player, but he's inconsistent, on a Boston level team. What is he, the 11th or 12th man? And he's
Yep.
8th or ninth on our team. Like, that's the difference.
Yep. That's the Cavs. And again, I think this also stems from the Mitchell trade. You lack assets to go out and get these kind of players. You gave up draft picks, so maybe one of these draft picks that they gave up could have turned into their sixth man off the bench who is a two-way player. It's there's zero consistency coming from the Cavs bench, zero consistency whatsoever, and you never know what you're going to get any night from anybody coming off that bench. The only people that you know what you're going to get from on a nightly basis is pretty much Mitchell, um,
And Allen,
Mobley,
probably.
yeah, and Allen. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Those two. Besides that, like you don't know what you're going to get from these players. So we need to see a hell of a lot more consistency. And again, I just don't know what moves that they can realistically make that's going to push them into that title contention without basically without some team wanting to having a disgruntled superstar or something like that saying, all right, I want to deal this guy and the Cavs swoop in. But
So
that's not happening right now.
I gotta say this one last thing. Obviously, you guys have touched on the Woodward on the Land Sports Show. Bronny James, and I don't care. It's not happening. LeBron is staying in LA. Cavs fans can get the pipe dream out of their head. But the reason why I say that is because I don't even care what the Cavs do at the number 20 pick. They can draft whoever they want to me. This is the weakest NBA draft I could remember in a long time. One of the reasons why this interview with you is going up on the day it is because I'm not covering the NBA draft this year. Um, we only do a podcast, 2 days a week, and there's a lot better stories. And to me, this what we're talking about right now, the what ifs and the scenarios, is way more interesting than a draft that has two players from France and everybody else nobody knows. Let's be honest.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. This draft, there's going to be stars that come out of this draft.
Oh, there
There's
are. I
guaranteed.
have said you're
We
gonna find somebody in
we
the
don't know.
second round you never heard of, but they're gonna be a star. So
Yeah.
yeah, like nobody knows who I mean, the classic example, right? Nikola Jokic, second round pick, was drafted during a commercial,
Hmm.
and look what he's become. So it can happen. I'm just saying, if you're gonna tell me, I can tell you what the Cavs need, but if you're gonna tell me who they're gonna draft and why, I have no idea, and I couldn't tell you if they're gonna be contributors or not. I could care less.
It's what this being in the 20 spot in this kind of a weak draft class, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Browns over these last few years without having a first.
Okay.
because you know what? They're going to the second or third round if they trade back, and it's like, all right, who are they going to take? Like, who is there? It's a little bit hard to predict. There are guys that I like. There was the kid from there's two kids I like, and I don't know that they're going to be there. The Ron Holland kid, I've seen him mocked anywhere from 8 to like 19.
See,
And this
that's
kid was
ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Florida's ceiling draft range be that wide? I don't get it. And then the other kid is Isaiah Collier from USC.
yeah.
And the reason why I like these two guys is because coming into this year, they were, off and on top projected picks. The season went along and they have dropped. And I kind of see that, I don't know, a lot of times when you see guys that were, projected high picks, the season goes on, they kind of fall off. Those are the guys that end up being halfway decent because you know what? Everybody had time to nitpick their game apart and take them apart and everything else, and they dropped, but they were good players all along.
Well, and Clarence, I know that you are obviously a big North Carolina fan, but I have said the one problem with college basketball that has led into the NBA draft is, we talk about the overseas players and the G League players and all that. Well, college basketball has really turned into a one and done and a 3 week sport. I mean, the
Yep.
sport, you don't need to watch the regular season. The sport starts at the conference tournament. You could be under
Mm-hmm.
500 in the regular season, win your conference tournament, and go on to the Elite Eight. I mean, look at what North Carolina State did this year.
Yep. Yeah. I was a huge college basketball fan coming up as a kid. Still am a big fan, but you're right. Like it has become kind of like a 3 week sport. Like I watch my Tar Heels play, as much as I possibly can. Um, I watch some of the other top teams here and there, but yeah, everything doesn't. It seems like nothing matters till you get to the tournament at this point. Like you said, conference tournament, NCAA, and then what we're seeing in college basketball too is, at least especially this year, that there's just not really any, I should say, stars that are coming out. Like we're looking at the top of a draft that features, like you said, the two French guys. Like, the best player in college basketball, I think, is to who that Eddie kid. I don't think he's that great. Like, there's
No,
just,
there,
I don't
there,
know. So I
there,
think the lack of star power.
and like somebody had said, and I can't recall who, there's a problem in the current NBA if a player the height of Zach Edey can't play in the league.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's the league has become way more athletic. He might have been Zach Edey might have been the number one pick in drafts from 85 until 2000, or a top five pick, just because of his size. He does have a decent skill level. I'm not a fan. I just think he's slow. I think that I talked about it on the land. There was like a 5 minute span where I watched him get bodied up by guards, miss a couple dunks, and airball a free throw. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with him after that. Like, I don't the biggest game of the year. But yeah, there's a place for him in the league. I don't know where he played with the way that the league has changed. And now the big guys got to be able to shoot. They got to be able to be mobile. They got to be able to do a lot of things. You know, I compare him to Rudy Gobert, who I'm also not a fan of. He keeps winning Defensive Player of the Year, but I also see him.
getting
There's nights where I
driven
look at him
by
and he's got,
constantly.
yeah, he's a statue. And I look at, I'll watch him play and I'll be like, I don't really notice him doing a whole lot. Then I'll look at his stat line. He's got, 7 points and 6 rebounds.
Yeah,
And I'm like, at that size, if you got 6 rebounds, that's a problem.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you just one sort of non on the court NBA question. It has to deal with the new NBA TV media deals that are coming out. Obviously, ESPN seems to be the big dog retaining the NBA finals. You got Amazon Prime involved, and NBC sounds like that they are going to get back in the race. Obviously, it sounds like the NBA on TNT is going to no longer be a thing. I know a lot of people are upset about it, and I get it because it is the best, pre-game, post-game show. Though I don't watch a lot of the pre and post-game shows. But from my perspective, the one thing that I worry about when it comes to these TV deals is it does feel like, obviously the NBC contract has a lot of Peacock exclusive games in there. And obviously we know that the Amazon Prime thing is streaming. Like I get streaming is the new wave, it's the new media, da 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 da. Da. But I do think that there is value in broadcast. There is value in cable. Um, and so I wonder if I know the NBA is going to get a ton of money from these deals, but to me, they're also taking a big risk here.
I agree with you. You don't want to take your product out of the easiest way for people to consume it, which
Yes.
is television. You don't want to take it away from there, but you also want to keep up with the new trends, and streaming is that's the way it is. So I feel like there's going to come a point where the NBA probably does realize, because I will say this, out of all the leagues, the NBA is the one that embraces change. If they see a rule that they don't like or anything like that, they will test it out maybe in the G League or something like that and see how it goes. Or they'll put it in the NBA, and if it works, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. And I feel like they are a progressive league, so I feel like that's kind of why they are doing what they are doing. But I kind of agree with you, man. I just don't know that, like, I've got 7 different streaming services now.
Yeah. And I have
Like,
cable too. Like you need them
yeah,
both. That's what I don't
yeah.
think people realize because if you go to this YouTube TV or Hulu or football, whatever you have, they don't have every single channel to watch the sports games. They are missing one or two. Every single one of them.
Mhm. Yep, everyone. It's I got direct TV stream so I could watch Valley, so I could watch the
Yes.
Cavs, because I knew they were one of the places that had it. But then, like you said, I've got Peacock if I need to watch this. I've got Amazon Prime because it looks like they're gonna be in the race. And then, like you said, I'm paying for cable. It's just, I like that they are expanding the way that you can watch games, but I also think you are taking some people out of it who is like, all right, I can afford cable and that's it,
Yep.
and maybe one other service.
That was my biggest problem and a little bit of a connection with the NFL. When the NFL said that they were going to put Christmas games on Netflix, I pushed back immediately. I don't mind you having a random Saturday night game on Peacock or Thursday night on Prime. I don't even mind if you do a playoff game on Peacock, to be honest with you. But when you put your, second or third highest viewing day of the year next to the Super Bowl and Thanksgiving on a
Mm-hmm.
streaming service where people are traveling or people are maybe going over to grandma or grandpa's house that maybe don't have access to a smart TV or hell, God forbid, internet. And I've done this, and it's sad, but I've also spent holidays in nursing homes and hospitals, and they don't have the equipment for that either. So
Yep.
you, to me, are losing your, day to get 45 or 50 million viewers. It's absurd what the NFL gets to just put it on Netflix to me for that specific day just felt wrong.
Yeah, I agreed. Agreed. I feel like all these leagues are trying to. Obviously, it's about the money, number one. So whoever's going to pay for for these games, they're going to obviously, whoever's going to pay the highest price for these games, they're going to go with that. But I agree. I just don't. I don't know. I feel like you are leaving some people behind, that some of your biggest fans, you're leaving them behind when you're putting these games on, like you said, Netflix, which is something, again, I pay for. But I at some point, I'm figuring I got to get rid of some of these damn streaming services, but I can't, because that's the way things are going right now.
Yep.
That's where all the sports I want to watch are going to.
Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.